to another edition of Good day. Welcome to another edition of the Africans in America podcast. Today, we want to explore something that is very dear to African immigrants: religiosity among the African immigrant community. A Pew Research report found out that African immigrants are one of the most religious group of people in America. They have a high degree of religiosity among them, but we all know that the African immigrant community is very diverse. We have both the Christians, and even in the Christian community, there are the Catholics, the Methodists, and then the Pentecostals. Then they have the Muslims, a high degree of the Muslims from the other parts of West Africa, some parts of East Africa, Somalia, and it's a very diverse bunch. But even among that bunch, there's still those people who practice African indigenous religion. That one that some people will call something like Yoruba Orisha tradition, voodoo from Benin Republic. These are really consequential religious practices that are very common among the African immigrant community, and to a large extent, even the Blacks in diaspora. So today, we want to explore the role religion plays for the African immigrant community. We know that in modern day America, one of the biggest exports from some countries to America now from Africa is Catholic priests. In fact, Africans take advantage of the R category of visas that bring in a lot of religious workers into America, because Christianity in America is dying to a large extent among the American population, and they're importing and infusing African immigrants to play the roles of priests, nuns in many Catholic institutions, and even in some Pentecostal, Baptist, and Methodist institutions. And these institutions don't only play the role of saving souls. They are now multi-role institutions, helping to settle African immigrants, helping to become contact centers, helping in getting them settled, getting them acclimatized to America. There's a lot of roles that these religious groups and institutions play. So today, being that is the topic of our discussion, Weruche, what role, what impact have you been seeing among the African religious community in America?
Hi, everyone. Okay. It takes me to TikTok, and it's going to allow me share a personal story. So I was born Christian, as most of us were in Nigeria, and attended Catholic school. I even worked in the Catholic church for the most part, even from when I was young until I was in high school. And so when I came to America, I continued the trend of, attending my Episcopal church, sometimes my Pentecostal church, sometimes my Catholic church. So I was kind of dancing around, and being in different things. It's first of all, the role it plays is that it grounds us, right? It's our source of, and we're speaking now about Christianity particularly. It grounds us. It's our source of connect. It's how we connect to God and all of that. Now, that being said, our traditional rights, our culture, is still in America in recent times. I have learned I began to learn more about my culture in America. And that's as a result of, like I said, TikTok. Some of the videos that I've watched on TikTok, some of the spiritual teachers I've met on TikTok, that are specific to Nigeria, specific to our Igbo culture. And they've taught me about the history of the traditions in Igbo land. In fact, one particular spiritual teacher connected the practice of the water appeasement, right? Connected it to some Asian traditions and cultures that still exist today, that still persist today, right? And so it brought up the question for me. It brought up the question how colonialism, right, was very instrumental to eroding Africa of her actual culture and rights and traditions, right? And again, I'm still a Christian. I will go to church any day. I will take communion, right? I'm even intending to get baptized yet again in church. My Christian faith is unwavered. That being said, the disconnect with my African tradition and my African rights and and culture is very obvious. There's a lot I don't even know about the history of my traditions and my in the in Igbo land particularly. And when I was doing research, right, a little bit something came up about the colonial erasure and and violence of our traditions. And it spoke about how let me see how early anthropologists like E.B. Taylor labored indigenous practices, right? Animism or fetishism, framing them as inferior to Abrahamic religions. And this violence it helps invalidate our African culture. And it's interesting when I watch and listen and communicate and engage. And I notice that us as Africans too are actually the ones that demonize African religion. But when we listen to the Hindus or the Buddhists or the Asian practices, we embrace their culture, we embrace their religion and tradition, whatsoever it is, and then negate ours. And so I feel that I think the role it plays, right, the African spirituality. I don't know how to qualify the role it currently plays again in the Western land that we where we are currently, and how I don't know how to qualify it, because it still carries that energy of, maybe based on media, I don't know, but it still carries that energy that it is wrong, it is not to be practiced. People are called witches for actually practicing traditional African. In fact, I
Man,
learned about African religion from the African Americans.
yes, yes,
They
yes,
taught
yes,
me my culture. And I'm like,
yeah.
wait, what? I didn't even know it. And so it made sense that even us coming from the motherland, the fact that we were actually there, them being not from the motherland in recent times, found ways to connect to the motherland. And so they learned Ifa, culture in Yoruba land. They learned a lot of things and began to practice it. And so I had to learn from them because, again, where I'm coming from, everyone is very Christian or
Yeah.
Muslim, but mostly
I,
Christian.
I,
So,
I know what you're talking about. I know the fascination where that some African Americans have when you tell them you're from Africa. For many of them, they have given up on Christianity. They still have strong Christian communities, but they have this fascination for the Yoruba Orisha tradition. They want to know more about it, and that is even causing some form of reverse tourism. We call some of these our religions because of these colonial connotations you are just expounding. We call them juju, we call them voodoo.
yes, we
But
call them
I,
Juju Voodoo. Yes.
and we put a bad tilt, an evil tilt to them. But I can tell you, when I was in New Jersey, I interacted with a very large Asian community in New Jersey.
Mm-hmm.
And among that Asian community, there were quite a lot of them who practice voodooism very proudly. They'll be chanting their voodoo, and I'm like,
Yeah.
this desire for and respect of African indigenous religion, ironically, is not more with the African community. It is more with the Black African diaspora
Yes.
from the
Yes.
Caribbeans and
Yes.
all that.
And I respect them for that. I do. I like that. It's almost like they brought me back to my culture just by interacting with them. A couple of questions they would ask just to get a feel for what I know. And then I found myself just really knowing absolutely nothing. And then they would educate me and they would talk about like their own practices. Some of them carry the ankh. You know, the ankh is like that cross that I
Yeah.
think it's ancient Egyptian, and it's probably how we got our actual cross that we use in Christianity. So you know, over the years it came from the ankh, and a lot of them carry the ankh, and they have these rituals that they do to connect with nature and to connect with, because our African spirituality is really about community, ancestors, and nature. These three
Yeah.
things is
To
what
tell
this
you
is
the
what makes up our African spirituality: community, nature, and ancestors. And so a
truth,
lot of them, that's why you hear, you know, that when they pray and all that, you know, they pray to the ancestors, they respect the ancestors. And I've only just in the past 2 years started the practices, and you know, I go to the river, I pray because it's nature. I go on the trees, I hug trees now because again, it is nature. So I find that me moving here, I have become more connected to my African part than I was in Nigeria. I had to say
let
that.
me I remember one viral TikTok video during the Super Bowl where
Hmm.
one, ironically, I think she was a white lady. She had
Mm.
a small effigy of Patrick Mahomes. So something
Mm.
you know in voodoo, right? And she held that effigy and she was pinching it. Some voodoo practice
Ooh.
where and it seemed to
Was
have
that
worked
supposed
for
to
the
help
Kansas.
him or destroy him?
Yeah, yeah, to hold him so that he will not be very and Patrick Mahomes didn't really do well in that match that day. And
No,
the
no, wait, but
Kansas
was she against him or was she for him?
she was against it. She needed him to be held up so that you know that voodoo practice where they pinch dolls in order to do something. So
Oh,
this
I don't
video
like
went
that though.
viral, and I'm like, so a white man even believes in this practice, and
Yes, yes, yes,
we don't believe in
yes.
it.
It brings us
But
to that topic that most other races and cultures embrace that. But I'll mention the one of the voodoo doll. I don't like that voodoo doll one. No. I don't like that one. That's not good. Why
Nah,
did she do?
but voodooism, you know, we have voodoo as the national religion of Benin Republic. It's very
Yeah.
common to the Yoruba, Dahomey stock in West Africa there. And they have shrines that people go from all over the world to Benin Republic because of those voodoo. In the course of publishing my newspaper, I've got to learn a lot about Africa and African communities, and they have this great actor, I think Dusho. I may not know how to pronounce his name. Hanso Dusho, the Benin Republic one who always acts, who was in Amistad.
What's his
He
name?
Hanso Dusho, Hanso Dusho.
Oh, I
The
don't know
one,
him.
yeah.
Jimon
Anyway,
Honsu. Jimon
huh?
Honsu.
Yeah,
Jimon
Shimon.
Honsu.
Now you get.
Okay.
Now yeah, he
Okay.
is from Benin Republic. He's an
Lovely.
ambassador, tourism ambassador, and they have
Well
all these
done.
shiploads of African Americans who go to, very religiously every year to Benin Republic to go and visit those
I love
voodoo
it.
shrines. Yeah, but beyond that, let's now talk about the roles that our religious institutions, especially in
Mm.
Nigeria, we have religious institutions that are we are fragmented.
Hmm.
We have our Pentecostal churches that include Winners Chapel, Redeem. We have all this mosque,
Deeper
all this
life.
deeper life. We have all these Islamic affiliated mosque that come and set up in America. Because you will not believe it, but in Bronx and in New York, where they have large populations of people from Mali and from Senegal, or even
Mm.
in Minnesota, where they have Somalians, you'll find mosque, African affiliated mosque in those
Mm.
communities. Then in among
Okay.
the Ethiopian community, you find a large amount of the Ethiopian church. And even among the Egyptian community, they have the Coptic churches. These are all religious institutions from Africa that enrich America. They have their churches, their meeting points for those communities, their
Mm.
contact centers. They play a lot of
Hmm.
roles for them. And that role they play, that role they play is very significant in putting, because when immigrants come here, most times they don't know, even sometimes they don't even know where to go, but they can Google and find a redeemed church. They can
Mm-hmm.
Google and find a winners chapel. They can
Mm-hmm.
Google and find an Ethiopian Coptic church close by, or they can find a Senegalese affiliated mosque close by.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Mm-hmm.
in this regard, how do you see this contribution to the African immigrant community here?
You mean the church,
The
the
churches, yeah,
availability of
yeah,
churches to them? I mean, I think it's good. Again, as immigrants, one of the key things that affect us is that lack of community and not having this, a sense of belonging when you come to a new
no,
place. But that's
yeah,
one of
that's true.
when you can factor in the churches and the ability to go to church and meet a Nigerian, because you always meet Nigerians. You always, any church, just walk into any church today and see what I'm saying. You will see one Nigerian. So for the immigrants, or let's be specific to where we're from, which is Nigeria, it builds a sense of community. It's helpful to them. It brings that familiarity that they have from back home and the churches and all of that. And like I said, I mean, churches serve very many purposes apart from teaching the doctrine. Fellowshipping, like we talked about in our last conversation, is very helpful to people. Like having leaving your quiet house, right, and going somewhere where you see a lot of people, you break bread, you talk, you listen to the word, and then you people have further plans. That's really good. So the fact that we have those denominations is very helpful, very, very helpful to immigrants. It's a great addition. The world is still Christian. Nigerians are not stopping today from, being Christian. It's what we were born into. Yes, colonialism empowered it. The missionaries did their work in spreading the gospel in Africa. But when you're in intellectual domains, like when I was in Colombia, my anthropology professor, Laila Abulugad, she says to me, you should use this opportunity that you have here at Columbia to find out more about your people. And she was the one giving me books to research, right? The feminist writers and all of that. She was the one that exposed me to feminist writers. I was clueless. Again, that's what happens when you come from a world that wants you to just think one way and doesn't have that, doesn't challenge you intellectually. You should be able to ask questions. You should be able to investigate. You should have a desire to research. I mean, if it's something that, like for instance, the African spirituality and religion, if it's something my forefathers were a part of, what's wrong with me finding out what it means? Like these days, I take cola nuts. I actually buy cola nut off of Amazon, just to feel connected to this thing. I break cola. I'm telling you, I break cola nut. I look at, oh, I got 5 lobes today. Oh, I got 7 lobes. I put it
For
in good
real?
old chat GTP and I Google ChatGTP, what does it mean to break 7 lobes? Then it comes up with this amazing like things, and then I throw it into Google as well, and that's where you see all these blogs that have write-ups about real Igbo blogs that break it down. My point is, what is wrong with me knowing about my culture? I can't stand up here and tell you I'm an Igbo girl. I know nothing about Osoji, alligator pepper, Unzu, kola nut. I know nothing. Actually, I have people in Nigeria call me and say, "Oh, you should go and get the ake Hausa," and I'm like, "Which is that one again?" They're like, "It's the one that when you break it is white inside. It's not the actual kola nut." Why would I try to write books and try to act like I know and I know nothing? And I know nothing. That's me being a fraud. And so for me, it's almost like a plea for everybody to go out there and learn. Learn about your
Yeah,
culture. Learn
yeah,
about what it means when a child is born and the things they put on the child they bring. Learn about the names that we're given. It's important. We cannot be in diaspora and then be acting clueless. And then it's people who was long separated from the diaspora that are teaching us our culture.
yeah.
You know what I mean?
I support this saying you're saying. I have a personal experience regarding what you're saying.
Yeah.
When I was living in Nigeria, being that I'm an Ijaw from the Niger Delta,
Mhm.
I got to meet one Fulbright scholar who came
Nice.
all the way as an anthropology PhD researcher from University of Tulane in Texas here, you know. I mean, no, I think it's in Louisiana or somewhere, not in Texas. It's somewhere in Louis. And what she came to do was she
Mhm.
came to study Egbesu.
Mhm.
Egbesu is an Ijaw deity.
Mm.
And this person had a fully funded PhD program, wrote a full book, and there's
Thank
no
you.
authority on Egbesu than that. And she was white. I mean, she's white.
Thank
She
you.
is an authority in our religious practices because she came. She embedded herself
In the within the community.
she went into the creeks, embedded
Yes.
herself in the villages, found
Mhm.
every single Egbesu priest between Ondo and Cross River State, and
Yes.
came out with, and that's how she got her anthropology degree as a PhD from anthropology. So who can be a better expert of that in an academic way than her? Yeah,
Exactly.
I know
I
it.
have the same story with regards to Uguta, where I'm from. A white lady, Sabine Bell, something, went to Uguta, my village, and did her research. I don't know if that's how she defended her thesis, but she did her research again on the Mami water, the water goddess of Uguta cosmology. She
Mm,
took online. What's it? I've been studying this book because again, who am I to claim my heritage when I know nothing? I know nothing about it. I know nothing because, again, I'm Christian. I'll tell you a few times, once or twice, I was almost kidnapped in Nigeria. I pled the blood of Jesus and I was saved. And I'm just being honest. It's not a fake story, right? I believe very heart and soul in my Christianity, but I'm
mm.
realizing that I do myself no justice if I do not learn further about my culture.
Okay,
It makes me fraudulent if I
okay,
claim to be Igbo and I don't know anything. Mhm.
okay. Let's focus now on the African immigrants' contribution to religiosity. Yeah, just
Mhm.
before we went on we went on air, I was playing Waymaker by Sinach.
Mhm. The
That's
sound.
a global musical hit, Christian music hit. So you see, our Christian musicians they have become very successful in America, and their music has become accepted. Their method of preaching, the Pentecostal, the method by which they preach, the method by which they deliver the message has become part of the modern day American practices, especially among African Americans. But
Mhm.
beyond that, also, Tinach and Mercy Chinwo and all their Christian songs are hits all over America. They are played
Mhm.
in they are played in any most of the Pentecostal churches, the Baptist churches, and all that. That's a very powerful contribution to religiosity among Africans. But added to that, you see that the practice or the way we do our own form of preaching has also become adopted by so many of these churches. Our Nigerian, very flamboyant Nigerian pastors and how they practice and all those things. But here's the thing: you're a Catholic, or you were born a Catholic, right?
I was born a Catholic, yes.
And now the Catholic religion is in America is lacking. It has a workforce challenge, a challenge in the amount of priests that they have, and that's where you see a lot of Africans coming in now to fill up these roles as priests,
As
as
priest, yes.
as sisters. Like there was the once I was going back to Nigeria, there were two sisters.
From a
I forget where they
monastery. Mhm.
from a convent or somewhere, but they were part of one one of those religious orders. and they play a very important role in America here. What other contributions can you think of that our religious practitioners play in America?
Um, Mentors. They come as coaches and mentors and
Uh-huh.
teachers, right? I think they help with teaching, basically that's really all it is. I know that when I was doing the research for my grandfather, so that's another long story. A reverend priest was actually going to help me do the research. My grandfather fought in World War II, and he was going to help me get more information in Nigeria because he does the Nigerian travel. And so we met him at a convention. You know how you have your community conventions. We had one of those conventions and he attended. So now this is a reverend priest and he took it upon himself to help do the research. So again, they're information ministers, quote unquote. That's really how I see them. They are teachers. They know more about the community, especially the community they were born in and they worked in, and they come as ambassadors into these new communities in America to teach the culture too, somewhat,
That's true.
So they teach the doctrine, but they also teach the culture. They teach how things work in Nigeria through their when they're giving their little sermons and speeches and stuff. So yes, they play those roles actively, and even in Europe, same thing. I think I see them now as just mentors, coaches, teachers. A lot of them have Facebook platforms where they just give not just the word, they become like people who guide others, right, on a daily basis, that beyond the Bible, beyond the word of God. It's just like everyday living. They've become like those guides. So I think that the role is very powerful. Again, when I would love to engage with a reverend priest today, now that my thinking is a little different after attending Columbia University and after dealing with real intellectuals who aren't here to sugarcoat anything. They're not here to pander to your sensibilities. They are about what is. A cultural anthropologist is really about telling you how a group of people lived their lives. It's not about your sensibility as to whether you think, oh, it's poor, it's bad to say this, oh, it means that your superstition is. They don't care about that. They just want to research how a group of people live and use that in translating us as human beings over a long period of time. And so you saying elevating one particular way of being over the other is actually not what adds value. You have to look at it in totality. A group of people chose to be water priestesses. A group of people chose to be reverend priests. A group of girls decided they were going to be nuns. They look at it in totality, and probably look at the factors that led to each person making their choice and what was going on in the environment around the time each person committed to their lifelong practice, if that makes any sense. So as an anthropologist, she's looking at me and saying it's important you learn what even took place in your community. We're not even talking about the entire Nigeria because then that causes you to spread out. Focus on Igbo land, that is your heritage, that is where you're from, and learn about it so you can teach others. You have to teach, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's why when you talk about Ifa and Yoruba, remember the West had a lot of
Oh
education
yeah, you
for
got
the
it finally,
longest.
Ifa.
Ifa, yes, I respect it so much, but it's not my practice, so I don't ever learn about it. Actually, I see them have wars on the internet when they say, "Oh, are you an Ifa daughter? Are you a this?" And then maybe because I'm Nigerian, I should automatically belong. No, I don't. I don't go into things like that because if it's not my traditional whatever, I might be going into a realm that has nothing to do with me, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And so it's my job. I haven't even learned about my Igbo land, talk less of going to Ifa. But I was going to make a point about why Ifa is popular. So you know that in the western part of Nigeria, education came there first, right? Western education, I want to say. And so they were able to travel across to the west, to wherever, to teach about Yoruba land and Yoruba culture. That's why when you go to a school like Yale, they've had a Yoruba, they have Yoruba classes. It's been there. You
Mhm.
have your Yoruba lecturers. So Ifa traveled far simply because its children traveled the world, became ambassadors and told
Yeah,
their different practices and stories. And it's respected. It's respected today because of that reason. And so I challenge Igbo people to wake up. I challenge even Efik people, Akwa Ibom people, house to wake up and travel the world and teach your culture with confidence because it's your culture. It does not mean you have removed, you've stepped away from Christianity. No, but it's the way of your ancestors. It's what led
yeah,
these amazing people to come across the shore to try to dig into how you live. Yes, at some point they decimated it, but then, you know what I mean? It's why people were attracted to learn about who you are. Does that make sense?
yeah.
I didn't
You
just
know,
call colonialists amazing, did I?
yeah, yeah. As a final note, I'll add to what you have been saying about
Hmm.
them being teachers.
Hmm.
One, I can't get his name now, but I know that one of the longest lasting history professors and cultural professors, I think in Harvard, was a
Hmm.
Nigerian religious tutor. We forget that most of these priests, when they come here, especially the Catholic priests, they have
Hmm.
doctorates from
They
their
do.
theological studies. So
They're
when you were
very
telling about
educated.
their teaching and they're being good teachers, that emphasizes it. Beyond that, also, they
Hmm.
they are they are leaders of religious communities, usually in very way back, way laid back, white only communities. It
Hmm.
changes the perception of how those people used to see blacks. To a large extent, you see that they come and they send them to churches in the rural areas where you have mainly
Hmm.
Caucasian communities and all that. So that
Hmm.
really helps in changing their orientation about how we are seen.
Hmm. That's true.
There's it's a whole talking point. But
It
it's
is.
a good thing that the Africans are really big on religion here. We are known for our religiosity, and it is helping in cultural exchange.
It is.
The most times the religious churches and religious institutions are places for social justice and advocacy. They
Hmm.
advocate for their people. They find opportunities for their people. They become welcome centers. They become centers where people meet and all that. Anyway,
Yes.
we have explored. Do you have one final word? I know we have just a few minutes
No,
more.
no, no. I think we covered it well. Again, I think it's a call to action. My call to action will be more Africans, more Nigerians, depending on where you're from, more the west, the north, the south. Learn to teach your culture. Learn more about your culture first, and then try to teach in your little community, your little groups. It's a whole idea. Like one of my professors I met also said to me, go to Yale, offer to teach them Igbo. I wasn't able to. I didn't. I had too much going on, raising my children and all the things I was doing. So it never happened. But it's something that if people are listening today, if that's something you're able to do, see how you can go to the schools around you, offer to teach your language, the very basic language, right? I learned Arabic because my Arabic professor came to Quinnipiac and taught us Arabic. He came to and taught us, at least to say the alphabets and to learn the basic greetings. And so the point is, it doesn't have to be a really big thing that you're doing, just a little thing. Teach the language, teach how to count, teach the food, and
Yeah.
expand the culture. That's
Well,
how, so yeah. And
I
that's
lived
it.
in I learned Arabic because I had to learn some Arabic. I lived in Saudi Arabia for 2 years.
Oh,
Recently,
nice.
recently I was coming back in North Carolina. I met one person in the airport, and when I told him I was a Nigerian, he told me a story of one Ogoni guy who got into his community, obviously a very white community, was accepted in the local church, and today is the priest of that local
Lovely.
church.
Lovely.
That's a good one.
That's lovely.
Anyway,
That's lovely.
today we come again. We come to the end of another beautiful edition of Africans in America podcast.
Hmm.
Weruche Uzoka, thank
Hmm.
you very much.
Thank you.
You did this topic justice. Uh,
You too.
and
You
as
too.
always, I will call on you all to make comments. Nobody has made a comment yet about what we're doing. Don't be shy about it. Make comments. Tell us how you feel about if you are an African, if you're not an African, just give us feedback on what we're doing. As we are growing in number, our golden number is 50 subscribers. We're slowly moving towards that. We urge you to like, share, and subscribe. Like, share, and subscribe.
And
Spread our message.
subscribe.
We'll continue
Alrighty.
to explore so many other topics that affect the African immigrant, the African diaspora, and just the African in America. Thank you very much. Have a good
Take
night.
care. Bye bye.